on, let me turn this oh my lord. This is my husband's iPad, so like
That's okay.
How are you?
good, how are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to finally meet you. Oh my goodness.
You too, you too. You look
What
exactly like your photos, so
So do you. What on earth is that behind you?
which thing?
It's like a guitar violin situation.
This?
Uh,
Oh,
that.
this is
Yeah.
this is a zither.
I'm gonna pretend that I know what that is.
Yeah, it's my husband makes instruments. He did not make this when we found it, but it is a an instrument. It's kind of like an auto harp. It's not an auto harp, but it's similar.
Oh, well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. It's like such an honor because I really, really admire your work.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. You're so sweet.
Cool then.
So I thought just to start off with, you could maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. No pressure, but
Yeah. Well, my name is Lisa, and I shoot mainly Polaroid film. I've been doing that since about 2012. It was shortly after my mom died. And on Flickr, I had already been working with like 35 millimeter, and I was taking some classes because I used to work for the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and you got to take free classes if you worked there. So I took like a couple darkroom classes, and then when I started connecting with people on Flickr, I really liked that aesthetic that was coming out of the Polaroid stuff, and just meeting people online, I had somebody gift me a camera and some film, and from there it just kind of took off from there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, my and I really got into it emotionally and attached to it after my mom passed away. I think because when she passed away and I was going through all her stuff, I saw that I saw like all her old photos, and Polaroid had that same, like faded sort of soft focus look to them. And I just felt very connected in that way to the process and to my mother. And then over the years, it's taken on many different reasons why I do it. I mean, I just love to shoot with it, but yeah. And then, what else was I going to say? Sorry, I'm kind of shy and I'm a little nervous.
this is totally chill. There's no pressure or anything. This is just a chat between mates, right? Like
That's good. Yeah, and then I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
No, don't be daft.
I do remember what I was going to say was my background. I actually do not have a background in photography from when I was younger. I actually wanted to be a writer, and that's what my master's is in, from the University of Pittsburgh. I have my MFA in writing, and I am an editor and writer in my day life, and this is my other life. Well, I say it's my other life. I guess I've come at peace with that they could coexist. Like you don't have to solely do photography to be a photographer. It took me a long time to even call myself a photographer, if that makes any sense. Because there's something I think that gets drilled in people's heads where if you're not doing it as you're living or whatever, that means that is not who you are. But I mean, obviously that is completely untrue. But so when I was in grad school, when I should have been working on my manuscript, I was off with my friend Dan. We would go on these photo excursions around the city. I live in Pittsburgh. And even then, I didn't even think about my connection to photography, which in hindsight sounds crazy to me because I was devoting so much time to it. And I spent so much time. Like, I remember once driving, I was driving to class, and Pittsburgh is very hilly, and there are a lot of bridges, and there's a lot of very beautiful views of from the hilltops. And pretty much, I mean, I live in a town now right outside the city that is on a hill. It's nothing but hills, and but those beautiful vistas, like it's really pretty. And I remember coming through the tunnel, and when you go through the tunnels into the city, it's like a blast. And I remember like, oh, I got to get this one shot. And I remember pulling over. I wasn't even into the whole Polaroid thing yet. I had a Canon 35 millimeter, and I was carrying around taking with me, but I still, even at that point, didn't consider myself a photographer, even though now I know that that's what we do. Like, right. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, pull over, and you know, he has to swing the car around. My
lesson. The things that our spouses go through.
Yes, and keeping me from walking in traffic or whatever. Like, so that it wasn't until I think I started when I took the few darkroom classes at Art Institute, that's when I was like, I realized how much I loved it when I was spending all day in the darkroom, since I had access to it. And I spent hours and hours making prints, and it was then that I was like, okay, I really love to do this. And so fiction writing, which is what I originally wanted to work towards, I mean, I haven't written a short story since I was in grad school, because photography has taken over for my creative part, and you know, the writing and editing, that's just something that I enjoy doing as my job. So
yeah. That's amazing. That's so cool. It would be interesting to see what you would come up with if you merged the two, like maybe creative writing and a story, you know, in visual, like images, and I don't know, like I'd be excited to see that for sure. Maybe in the future. No pressure, but do it.
Well, when I make photos, I think of them in terms of a book. Like, a lot of people want to exhibit their work, and I mean, exhibiting is great, and it's very exciting, you know, to be chosen to do something or to be involved. But to me, I've always loved the photo book because it's something that is accessible to more people. Well, depending how expensive, because it could get expensive to make a book, but if you can make an affordable book for people, it's like art that they can hold in their hands and carry around, and that's always been more appealing to me than exhibition. But
I think it's so important. I think photography books are so important. Like, I think social media plays such a huge part in our lives in terms of like inspiration and, you know, like learning and stuff, but there's something to be said about just spending some time away from social media and just enjoying art in like a large format, you know.
Yes, no, it is I love Instagram. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of controversy and issues with Instagram, but I'm glad that people, despite some of their frustrations, like people that I admire and follow, and that they still stay with it, because I don't it's just a good way to connect, you know, artistically. And I love meeting people from around the world and talking about art and seeing what they're doing. And
Absolutely.
and that's not something that ever would have happened, you know, years and years ago.
I've met some of the nicest people like on Instagram. It's ridiculous. Like, people are so generous with like, not, you know, like, here, this is how you do this, and like, here's some advice. It's like, wow.
Yeah, when people have contact me, like, how do you do this? Like, I just tell them. I keep my posts spare, not because I'm trying to hide anything. I just it's just I think it's because I started a certain way of posting and I've just haven't deviated from it. Although I'm starting to think about trying to do a reel, which is a little, I don't know,
so
like
good.
maybe like how I set up my self-portrait, because I do a lot of self-portraiture. So I could show how I actually, or even just the tiny little space in my bedroom where I usually shoot photos. Like, it's a very small space, even though some people think it's like this giant studio, and it's totally not. It's actually just my bedroom where I push back my furniture. Jeff and I will push back all the furniture so I can have like an empty space to work in, and I'll work there for the afternoon. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm currently in my husband's music studio, and I'm like, guitars over there, microphones over there.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah,
It's cute, man.
yeah, like right here, like where I'm sitting, I've shot photos in this little space, which is just in the it's like the entryway of our house. So it gets
light. So what more could you want?
Yeah, it gets really great. Today is very gloomy, but yeah, it does get nice light.
Okay, cool. So I mean, I'm thinking like next question. So what is the 12-12 project and how has it affected you creatively in your photography?
Yes, the 12-12 project was started by a photographer, Penny Feltz, and she passed away last year.
Oh,
and
no.
It's now, yeah, she had cancer. It was very sudden though. We found out very quickly. She said, okay, I'm going to take a break for a few months, and then she didn't come back. She passed away. Yeah. It was very shocking. And she started the group as a way for other Polaroid artists to connect and to kind of get them out of their comfort zones. So her stuff was amazing. She would cut up things. She would do encaustic, a lot of Polaroid encaustics. Like, she just wasn't afraid to do different things with her Polaroid to make them standalone art pieces and taking it beyond the still image. And so that, prior to meeting Penny and being in 12-12, there is no way in hell I would have ever touched any of my Polaroids. But now I'm just like, yeah, why not? Oh, this one didn't turn out very well. Let's see what we can do with it. So there was one of the group members, Enrique, he had once said the reason that Polaroid photographers can become so creative is because the film is so expensive that when you get a shot that's not great, you are determined to make it work. And I just laughed because I was like, yes. So that's exactly what we do. But sometimes it's fun to see what you'll come up with. But yeah, she started the project, and it started out with 12 women. And then she invited 12 men to come on like a few years later. And now there are 24 of us, and it's headed by, his name is Kram Schubart, and he lives out in California, and he runs the group now. So each month we have a theme, and we shoot a photo based on whatever that theme is for the month. Yeah.
That's incredible. What a beautiful legacy he's left behind. I think that's really inspiring. And I think the thing you were saying about Polaroids as well, like, I've recently started taking Polaroids, but I was like, you get like 8 frames, right, for however much money it costs, and they were all terrible, but I'm kind of inspired now to see, like, what can I do with this? Like,
oh yeah, you see, the funny thing is you will think, oh, this is terrible, but I bet you I bet you they're beautiful. Like, what some of the things that happen to them, like the happy accidents and things, like sometimes there will be chemical streaks that look like lightning, or you'll have in like very expired Polaroid film, you'll have what they call flames, which are like these orangey yellow. It looks like fire. It's just those kinds of imperfections really make it what it is. I mean,
that's what I love about film. It's you never know what you get. That's like there's that special sauce, you know, that you just can't get with digital. Like I love digital, but you can't. It's unmatched. For sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love dust specks. I used to spend time, like my husband, he's a graphic designer, and he was the one, like if something was like super, like had a lot of dust specks, I would have him like help me go through and touch it up, and you know, but now I don't even care. Unless it's like a really bad one, like I will leave the dust specks there. Just because sometimes I love it because it adds a nice texture to the photo. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of got that like retro kind of like old school look. I really dig it.
Yeah. So it makes you creative, and the more you're doing it too, the more you really know your camera, the more that you're going to get shots. You're going to get more consistent shots, you know. And I mean, over the years, I could shoot off a pack of like the 8 frames and have stuff that I'm satisfied with, as opposed to in the early days where there would literally be one and the other ones are just completely blown out, you know, because I had no idea what I was doing. But I have some idea now. And
I definitely know what you're doing now. Like,
I have some idea, and it doesn't. Yeah,
your work really, like, it reminds me of that moment between being asleep and waking up, that like dreamlike state, if that makes any sense at all.
Yes, like, that's so nice.
Whimsical and magical, and it's very emotive. So I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit about your artistic process and how you get inspired to make such interesting work.
Yeah, I think I've always been drawn to I guess what some people might call morbid, but I've always been drawn to like I love horror films, and I love Victorian spirit photography. If you look at those old photos where the spiritualists would, you know, make double exposures of and say, oh, this is your long lost, you know, relative who passed away years ago, even though those were tricks of photography, I find something really poignant about them, because they were also there to provide comfort to people. And I love the surreal nature of them, but I also love the fact that that's what they were there for in their better purposes, as opposed to, you know, like obviously there were people out there who were trying to scam people into, you know, thinking that these were real. I mean, maybe they are. I would say what inspires me, I would say the beginning of when I started taking photos, I would hear a lot that my photos were creepy, which I always take as a compliment. I think that's a good thing for me, but now I actually hear that people find them comforting and almost hopeful, and I feel like that has to have something to do with how I am as a person now, as opposed to years ago when I started. If that makes any sense. I'm a big firm believer in how you go into any kind of artistic project. The rhyme frame you're in is how it does affect how it's going to look when it comes out. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's kind of like with I remember that with writing, you know, like if you feel like I feel like stilted, and it's plotting, it's going to feel stunted and plotting. So I believe that as well with photography. Sometimes to get me motivated, sometimes I will fall back on what I call comfort shot, which is like a trope that I'll normally use, like mirrors. I've always shot with mirrors since I started doing photography. So sometimes I'll pull out a mirror and I will do a mirror shot, just because it's something that I know I'm comfortable with. And, you know, there's always the challenge with the go-to shot, like how can I do this differently? So that's sort of where I'll start. I mean, it's not always with a mirror, but sometimes I'll do that, to just, and then once you're going, you just keep going. Yeah. Even if you look completely ridiculous, even if, you know, sometimes I have an idea of what I'm like, I have a notebook where I do jot down ideas. Like, okay, like I'll have a setup that I want to do, and then I'll refer to that. And then sometimes I'll just go from that starting point from the notebook. Lately, I've been working a lot with flowers that we've been growing in the garden. So that's been helpful too, because I primarily take self-portraits, and sometimes I want to push out of my comfort zone. I want to take photos of objects as well, kind of breathing life into those. And because I feel like, to me, that's like, it's a weakness of mine. So I want to, that's why I've been doing more of the flowers, which is, I don't want to say cliche. Everyone's going to always take pictures of flowers. I always love them. I don't care how many times you've seen the same shots. I always love a floral shot. But I think with those lately, I've been trying to see, like, well, what could I do with this that could make it different and unusual? And, you know, that's always what I'm trying to do when I'm shooting a photo.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I think you're definitely not cliche.
Okay. That's good.
So, I mean, we started chatting, I think it was maybe a year ago, I can't remember. I sent you a message asking for some advice about self-portraits, because I really admire your work. Thank you. And I wanted to know, what have you learned about yourself through taking self-portraits?
I think what I've learned is there is definitely, I feel like I feel more centered since I started doing self-portraiture. And even though I think that there is the fear, I think that especially with women, I think that when women do self-portraiture, we're always going to face the criticism that it's like a narcissistic thing to do. But when a male does it, sorry guys, I'm sorry, I'm just saying heads up. It's very brave. It is. It's cool. I love when guys do self-portraits, because they normally, it's not common. Although I'm seeing it more now, and I love it. But when men do it, women do it, there's like the hint of narcissism. I think that I'm glad that, I guess I stopped giving a shit if it was self-centered, because I was like, damn it, I'm just gonna keep doing this. But the fact that it seems to translate well with my audience. Like, I've never heard that. I mean, if people think it, they've never told me. But, and again, I don't care. I guess what I'm saying is, like, it makes me feel very centered, because when you're doing the whole process too, you're like, you're the camera person, you're doing the whole, the conception, you're doing everything. And so there is a strength in that. I think I feel that.
I feel that too. I think I was always of the opinion before I got into photography that, you're just so into yourself if you take pictures of yourself. But I think it's like very therapeutic, and it's really like taught me that it's okay to give time to yourself. I think that's what I meant with self-portraiture. Like, it's okay to like have you time, and that's something that you know, I struggled with, but like I definitely learned that through self-portraiture for sure.
Yeah. And when I had and I had mentioned this to you in when we had chatted via Instagram, I had cancer about I've been in remission for 4 years, over 4 years. I was diagnosed 5 years ago. And that self-portraits changed for me a lot, because at the time I was younger, and I think I relied a lot on my like the way I look to carry the photo in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then once I had cancer, it took on a completely different meaning, especially since I was getting older. I physically changed, you know, I lost a lot of weight. I was completely bald. And but at the time, you know, I was just like, well, fuck it. I'm gonna take pictures anyway. I don't care. And that's actually, I feel like my voice in photography became a lot stronger because of that. So there was a lot of like any insecurities that I ever had before just kind of flew out the window then, you know. I was just like, whatever. So that was a huge moment for me, very positive as far as like photography. I mean, photography helped me to escape all that, the everyday, like the waiting for test results, like it, because the one thing that people will tell you about cancer is, while there's a lot of fear, there's also a lot of boredom.
Yeah.
Because and because, you know, you can't go, well, at the time, because I had non-Hodgkin lymphoma, my immune system was always like very you know, very compromised. And then I had a splenectomy, sorry. And that made me more immunocompromised. And when you're going through chemo, so like I didn't leave the house a lot. So that's sort of where that started, with the photos in the bedroom and everything. And that helped me basically cope with, you know, the fear and the boredom and the uncertainty of what was happening around me. Yeah.
It's very poignant. It's so beautiful how photography can help you in your healing journey. Like, I really feel that photography for me has been a massive benefit. Like when I've been trying to get through depression and the grief with my father, you know, like with his diagnosis. And it's so interesting to meet other people that are going through, not, you know, obviously not the same situation, but how art helps you along your journey to recovery and healing. And I think there's a lot to be said for it, for sure.
Yeah, it causes you to kind of slow down in the moment. And there is a comfort, whether it's, I think, but since the photo is capturing a moment in time, whether it's an actual moment or it's something that we, you know, create or imagine, it's comforting to know that will be there. You know, sometimes it'll take you back to those moments too. Like I will look at past photos, you know, during that time, and I just think, oh, it takes me that moment in a way that feels very real to me. Because I remember my oncologist had told me at one point, you know, well, once you get through this is going to feel like a dream. But at the time when you hear that, you think to yourself, this is like one of the worst thing that's ever happened. How could this be like a dream? Because at that moment it's so real. But it does end up feeling like a fever dream. And when you look at a photo of like any moment like that, it brings it back in a very real way, I think.
Yeah. Well, you're very like amazing, strong, amazing. Like I'm just like, sheesh, you're so awesome. So, I mean, what challenges have you faced when taking self-portraits, and how have you managed to overcome those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge is probably technically is to get to know the cameras enough so that I could work by my. I think that's what it was, because sometimes I would have to use Jeff is my husband. I would have to use Jeff is just for everyone. Yeah. Yes, Jeff's my husband. So Jeff, I would have to use him as like a stand-in. I mean, sometimes he doesn't want to do these, which I completely get it. Like, he can't always be there, you know. Or sometimes he would be like, I'd be like, okay, hold this camera. Oh, wait, hold this lens, hold it, you know, like he would be. So I think that was one thing, was just to be like, okay, I have to get up a set. That's why it's easy to work in the bedroom, because I could just have everything laid out. And I have the timer. As far as like stand-in shots, I mean, obviously occasionally I will still use him as my stand-in, but I think knowing the camera now, I can guess pretty much where I'll have to jump in once I set the timer to do a shot. I think emotionally, I think the biggest thing that I had to get over was, even though that the self-portrait is me in it, it's not about me, if that makes sense. I mean, okay, it is, but it's not, but it is. I know that that probably doesn't make sense, but me in the sense that, like, I'll give an example. Is when in the very beginning, when I started doing the photo thing, I would use different people as models, like friends of mine and stuff. And I remember this one friend of mine, I really liked the photos. She saw them and she goes, "Oh my God, I look so fat." And I was
no.
I was like, that's okay. First of all, she didn't, but in my head, I was like, but that's not even the point of this photo. This isn't like a glamour shot. This is an art photo. You know, I needed a figure in the photo. But it made me think about it. And I think that's what I mean. Like, it is, but it's not, but it is. It's not about, oh yeah, am I going to look a certain way when I do this photo? It's more like, how am I interacting within that space in order to create the moment, you know, create the mood or create the theme or whatever I'm shooting at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And what's some advice that you would give to someone that's never taken a self-portrait but would love to get into creative self-portraiture? What's some advice that you would give to that person?
I would say, just just go for whatever you think in your head. Don't be afraid, even if it looks completely bananas. Chances are it probably does look bananas to the outside world, but when you get it on the film, you might be like, oh my God, that looks amazing. You would be surprised if you do things that you think like, oh, I feel uncomfortable doing this. I would also suggest, like, I'm a big person. I'm a big fan of, like, people, like, whatever you get a photo with, then that is your piece of art. You don't have to have a huge fancy camera. I mean, I see amazing cell phone photography. So, I think, just what you have on hand is probably always going to be like your best photo, you know?
That's incredible advice. I think that's, definitely. I always used to think like, oh, I just need the best digital camera or this, like, no, just do it. Just do it already.
Exactly. I'm not a big gearhead. But yeah, I mean, I don't even have that many. I try not to have too many cameras. I don't know. That's just like, I'm a very, weird organized person. I'm very organized. So I always try to I'm minimal with my gear. I am not minimal with my wardrobe. I will tell you that. But I'm kind of a clothes horse. But with gear, yeah, I try to keep it minimal. The other reason I do that too is actually as for aesthetic purposes is I like to see how much you could get out of little of what you have. So I think with self-portraiture, I often like, instead of maybe it's good to have props sometimes and things like that, but sometimes it's fun just to see like, what can I do with this space and me in it? How is that going to make an amazing photo? You just have a space, yourself, and light. And what could I do with this? That's
sure.
Honestly all you need. Yeah.
I think you'll learn a lot faster that way. You won't, like, I think when I first started out, I was like, I need this lens and this lens and this lens. No, if you just have like a 50mm lens and yourself, if you do that for 6 months, you're going to be a pro, trust me.
Yes, absolutely. It's just and I would say just check your self-consciousness at the door, because that's not what it's about.
No, absolutely. I also think it's important to know that, like, well, for me especially, like, no one else has to see this work. It's just for you, like, there's something very special in doing a creative medium just for yourself. I think that's really beautiful as well.
Yes, absolutely. Sure. Yes.
So, I mean, do you have any up and coming projects or anything coming up?
Well, I have some photos coming out in a magazine called Photo Trouvier.
Ooh.
And it's people who use vintage, like, ephemera and photography as a base in their work. And so I do some collage with my Polaroid. So these are a few collage photos that I've used. Like, I have a folder full of like old photos and things I cut out of magazines and things like that I will incorporate sometimes into the Polaroid work. One of the photos being one of me and my mom. It's a copy of the photo because I didn't actually want to cut up the actual photos. So it's just a copy on paper of the photo that I collaged on there, and it's her. It's like a photo booth photo of her, and she's looking down one way, but I'm in a chair and looking down the other. So that means a lot to me that I could incorporate that into my work somehow, which I'm constantly thinking about how to do that with my mother's photos. But even after all this time, I haven't quite figured it out yet. I'm not sure why.
It will
that
come.
was one. Yes. That was but yeah, I'm excited about that because that magazine is really beautiful. And the collage, the photo montage and collage that people are doing is just completely insane. Like,
I'm excited to see that. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. And the 1212 project has a show in San Jose coming up. It's work that from the group, as well as a tribute to Penny Feltz, who founded the group. So that's coming up. I think it keeps getting pushed back because I don't know, they're doing like construction on the gallery. I think it's next month. So that's exciting.
I'm really excited to see that. That'll be
yes.
Brilliant. And where can our viewers find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Lisa Toboz, my first and last name, and you could connect with me on Facebook at lisa.toboz. And then and my website is just lisatoboz.com. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And one final question for you, Lisa. What does creativity mean to you?
It is survival. If I did not, I feel complete. If I've accomplished something creative in any way, shape, or form throughout the week, it had, something that, especially if it's towards photography, because if I didn't have that, I would feel as if something were missing from my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for spending
You're
some time with me this
welcome.
evening. I feel like I've known you forever.
I know. I could talk. You're so easy to talk to. I love
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Please let me know more about the 1212 exhibition next month. I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay.
Cool. And I will link all of your information in the description below.
Okay.
But thank you so much, my darling. I hope you have a really beautiful day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.